7 fascinating interviews with people where they started talking about how they learn. And I'll let some of these people are here today, folks I just mentioned, and they can tell their own stories a little bit. But I want to share one that came from me. And she describes coming into her classroom and having these cardboard boxes in the back of the room. And she wasn't a computer person. But the kids in the room noticed that they were there because these were computers, brand new computers that just left from the school. She went home and talked to her daughter, and her daughter said, well, what is that? So she opened the boxes, and she wants me to make sure she didn't make the kids do anything. She did it for them. But the kids plugged them in and had an opportunity day, and suddenly there was something to this. These kids were reading non-fiction fiction instructional books to set these things up. So these stories kept popping up. These were some of the most highly technological kids in education people in the country, and they weren't telling me that they were techies, except for Joel. They were telling me that they didn't really know much about this at all. In fact, they were a little intimidated. So that was kind of curious. So some of these stories seem to kind of stick out to me. And Dan Adams is a guy at Northwestern who does life and narrative studies in psychology. And at this point, we realized we weren't really doing educational research, we were kind of doing psychology. So we used his methodology to dig into this. And we went from these initial interviews to inviting a bunch more people into the project. And what we did is we looked at 6 national award functions, Teacher of the Year, PMs, the AIM Awards, and that sort of thing. We just invited them all with the same kind of thing. I say we, in my classroom, I should say I. I think one of them. So that's how it works. Of these people, quite a few of them decided to be part of the study. Now, a 42% of readers who participate rate is almost unheard of in what we do in schools. Those kinds of numbers are cool. Here's my thought on that. I think they wanted to participate because they had something to say. What I want to do is, to the best of my ability, share what they have to say to them on how they go professional development. Because they thought these stories were interesting enough, not only to share with me, but they wanted me to let them be more research. So my goal this morning is to share with you kind of 3 major concepts that came out of this research. And hopefully over the course of the next year or so, we'll make some book form for you so you can share it with others too. The word relevant. Now remember that picture of the professional development people in an irrelevant situation? These teachers kept talking about the difference between a relevant learning experience and non-relevant. Not only for their students, but for themselves. These are people that sought out relevant learning. Now this goes back to the research program. But all of us know it's interesting development things, we usually almost don't know that. So there's some intuition to this, but like how do you nail that down? So we use life narratives. First, we talk to these people who do this study to even find out what questions to ask. So they gave us great guidance on how to ask about professional development and life journeys. And then we went to this big, larger sample and we started to try to confirm or justify those questions against this large sample of teachers. This is how it looks in psychology. I changed that. Because for teachers, I wanted to capture a little bit more about their teaching career and not necessarily their life. Go along with that into it. So we looked at experience in PD, which we're going to talk about this morning. Experience of informational communication technologies, which is a whole other thing, and the experience of principals, like how do you have school leadership, which is really relevant to this discussion with teachers. And then of course we have to look at how this fits into the conversation that school management, school policy, design of teacher professional development kind of overlaps with leadership, which your programs have to do. As of 2011, and Desmond's work is wonderful, and if you're in professional development and look at this field, this is not to discredit her at all. Her work's outstanding, and she's summed up in last year the primer on effective instructional development in professional development. So in that primer, if I could break it down to one sentence, it looks something like this. We as a community deliver instruction to teachers. They then change everything they think about what they do, and then they go back to the classroom and do new things. That's the primer. That's what we think professional development is like for teachers. They get something, they change everything they do, and then they go to the classroom. They change what they think, and then they change what they do. The problem with this is, again, intuitively, like, that's not how I learn as a teacher. Generally speaking, I was memorizing first lesson finding out about what the water got. Or second, where did these things happen? Because these are really neat and innovative and producing great results for students. Most of the teachers usually concept and then I'll get into some of these things. He started off with this statement somewhere in there where he described something like, I know we're talking, I know I won an award, but I need to tell you, I don't really deserve the award. I've had a really unique journey to me. All this is common in academic studies, right? Teachers being very nice people are also usually very humble. So when they win an award, they try to condition that and say, I'm not that special. Well, let me tell you why I'm not that special. But I think that's kind of interesting that of the teachers that we interviewed, these award-winning teachers, how common it was that they were humble and how grateful they were for people that showed them new ideas and people that they could talk with those ideas about and principles that they wanted to try. And then those are the things they credit with their expertise, not their own know-how or what they do. So for those of you that feel you're not attending them, neither do the award-winning teachers being recognized for their technology. You have that in common. Instead of this PD movies we're practicing, we saw three other models, three other paths that teachers went on that seem to be more relevant. This is the other 75%. I like the second one. Teachers would go through an experience where they fail. One teacher candidly talked about giving a lecture, realizing he sucked at what he did. And then going home and wanting to quit his job, not knowing this is not a teacher, right? This person recognized for their abilities, but they just failed. And they realized they failed. And they came to that kind of conclusion that they failed. So then they started changing what they did. So these predispositions existed sometimes, but other times they would have realizations. And that was kind of neat. This is I'm saying 25 and 75%, roughly putting that out. The external realization, 23%, is having an external person tell you something. The internal realization, 33% of the time, had nothing to do with design professional development. It was a teacher reflecting on the practice. It was a far more effective study than these things. And then the other two, these predispositions, they came in with an attitude. Like these were teachers that often came into the teaching profession having hated school and getting in trouble with teachers and thinking when I teach, I'm going to do it different than that. Because that's why I'm teaching. So they would come in with these progressive predispositions that helped them to actually ignore professional development and teacher training as they went through it and come through that process with their own designs for teaching and classroom. And these are people winning awards from this profession. So let me just stop on that. So if I add that up, there's about 43% of teachers came into the profession with a way that they wanted to teach what they learned before they ever entered professional development. All they had to do was go from not knowing how to do that to knowing how to do that through this trial and error process in the classroom. And the system that they're ignoring is then recognizing them as master teachers. Do you see that as a dysfunctional system? So what do they call exploitation practice? Figure out with some of these things. And I think this is kind of fun. But I'll point out this one real quick. That's services. The red means that these teachers went out of their way to say that was not part of how I learned. And so I would just say, valuable learning services to your education. And teachers walk right away. The green right at the bottom is teachers that would say that was pretty relevant. Those were experiences that I had. So when you break it down even more by a specific question, teachers would either condition it, go, well, sometimes not, or they would say no, never. That's the red. Or they would say, that's been a pretty instrumental part of my teaching, which is great. If I go over to personal experiences with the same kinds of questions, do you see the difference? Okay, go on. Notice that hobbies and learning from your students became these very different things. So both of those are play spaces. When I learn something from my students, it means I'm playing, right? I'm doing something. They respond to it with engagement, motivation, rigorous learning, and then I keep doing more of that sort of thing, or they don't respond to it and I stop the practices. That actually became one of the more effective things. And notice that no one called that a no. All of these teachers, you can say I have research for your job. All of these teachers felt that learning from their students was one of the most relevant things to their professional development and helping them to learn. That's just another map to show something. This is pretty remarkable, this kind of research, to see that kind of difference between an institutional or design PE and people like the personal. See that? Very rarely did the teacher say, "Hi." So not only are award-winning teachers humble, not only are they finding relevant play spaces for your professional development, but they're getting that play spaces oftentimes in online communities, gaming communities, or knitting clubs and bowling clubs. So these hobby groups that you're participating in are where they're learning how to teach. How does that work? Well, one guy, Alan Rothman, is 88 years old and he's still teaching. Middle school. How does Alan Rothman stay alive? He's an exception. Not all of us can do it. He was at one point, he's like Forrest Gump. In the 60s, he was working on trigger mechanisms for nuclear bombs. In the 80s, he was working on his own operating system, but he complains that this Bill Gates guy did too. In the 90s, he came up with a theory on black holes that's yet to be put down by other physicists. So if he tried to explain this theory on black holes to me, and this is the only time in hours worth of interviews that I actually cut somebody off and say, I don't know what you're saying. We move on to the next thing. And like a good science teacher, he tried to explain it again. Bless his heart. He also has a pilot's license, and this kind of came into his classroom because he started to build simulators with plywood and metal bars with the shop teacher and have his classroom full of flight simulators. Then he was part of the astronaut, or astronaut, the star watching people. He was part of that club, and they gave up a telescope, and he built a hut on top of the school with a little thing built before, and then he started teaching classes. So this is a guy who very clearly took every hobby he had and brought it into his classroom. I asked him what he thought about the standards and how he was teaching the standards, and he said, "Oh, screw the standards, I'm too old." I want to wrap up with a couple of thoughts. Thank you for that. I get so excited about other people's stuff. Even my own failures. Digital experiences by far outweigh anything that can make a professional development situation. The only thing to come close is hobbies. Okay? People are learning in the community. If you're a teacher and you're not in the community, make friends in the communities. These are equally online communities and real life communities. Teachers would learn in community, and I want to share a couple of things. They would do it with worry and humility. Pick up on that a little further. All it is, rather than real, nothing real, there are already some teachers who are doing great things, so a lot of sharing between strangers online, right? So the great ideas are already out there. You're going to hear a lot of them in the conference. All they did is met people listening to great ideas and try them, even though they were worried. They know what's going on. So that's encouraging to hear. Then they went and got ideas from students, so they asked questions like, "Hey students, if we're going to learn about the Romans, any of you get computer games that have Romans in them, and you want to come do a presentation to your classroom?" And they started to work with the students as their professional development. And lo and behold, lots of students play computer games. So they would bring it into the classroom, and then they would say, "Well, that's kind of cool. We should play that in class," and then they would try that, and that would work. And then they would say, "Well, we should play the weekend." And they would do that, and that would work. And suddenly the test scores went up, and everything went well, and maybe people were good teachers. Isn't that a nice path? All they did was ask the students. Hey, students, what do you think? Second thing, PD and practice. This realization thing, I love this quote. I had the moment where I realized that I was teaching the same way that my teachers taught me in this book, and I was bored of it. Do you look at your students and are bored? Because if you do, you should be open to the idea that there's other ways to improve students. And you're going to get a lot of those ideas over the next 2 weeks. And I'm really excited to be able to use all of those sessions. I kind of like that. Then of course, this crashing and burning thing, I already shared that. This idea that failure can happen is good. And we need to stop being so scared of getting everything right for the test that we forget how to promote and learn from failure. We have to be able to try new things. And when teachers say, "Well, I can't do that, I don't have a spare day in my schedule," I say, "Well, try tomorrow and just try something new. And then go back to your schedule and you can catch back up." You're a teacher, you design all lessons. And that gets to be harder and harder the more we're trying to streamline the classroom teaching. The more we're trying to make every teacher look like the next teacher. So there's also this kind of thing going on where we have to learn to create ways of playing, critical learning, and failure runs. If we don't be willing to fail, we'll never learn and we'll never grow. We're killing our own ability to do professional development if we figure out how to play. Teachers are predisposed. They have internships. Here's the other thing that kind of blew me away. Let's respect our teachers. I'm talking to them right now, literally. That we forget that teachers have brains, they have to read what they're doing, and that they know darn well how to do it. Teachers are the best designers of the future because they do it every day. 5 days a week, they're designing lessons and putting them in front of kids. These are the sources with which we will find great ideas. That's the motivation for that mobile media learning book, where we put lots of great teachers in that book, is that we just need to talk to these teachers and bring them in front of us. Last but not least is the GiE conference, so I'm going to conclude with this point. Professional development actually happens in games. And some of these quotes, again, I'm talking to teachers of the year, presidential award winners, King award winners, national writing project winners. They're playing Everglades. And this is where they're learning how to get their ideas. They're playing World of Warcraft. Well, they were. They're trying to run the things online now because it's actually based on books. They're doing Twitter. They're doing Second Life. They're getting into communities. And what they're saying universally, they're going out of their way to tell me this, and it's my privilege to tell you this morning. Once they've tried these things, they don't know how they talk about them. And they'll never go back. I got one person. Let me try one more time. It blew my mind. It was a pivotal turning point in my life. You're going to hear ideas today. I want to hear you try some of those things. Back to your classrooms. This is where you try some. Make it happen. These gaming communities are gender-affirmed learning, and cited adults learn effectively by playing games with other people, learning to fail, and carrying over exciting learning experiences to their classrooms. Isn't that cool? Yeah. So what are we going to do next? Thank you so much.